Hello, welcome to the FanDuel Punch-Out. I'm Big Italy 42, and he's Spencer Limbach at Spencer_JL. We're talking about tonight's action, of course, on FanDuel. Big slate, and one of the better ones we've seen in a while. We got a ton of pitching options, like we were talking for the show. We got two bad pitchers in Coors Field again. Name recognition, but not in a good way. So, I mean, it's going to be a fun night tonight. So, let's go ahead, with that being said, and start off with starting pitcher where, if you can afford him, Max Scherzer at $11,700, nearly a minus 300 favorite against Philly tonight. Rightfully so. Philly down there fighting with the Angels as the worst team against righties in the league. And, I mean, Max Scherzer just been incredible this year. Almost a 30% strikeout rate. He's got he's never been a great ground ball pitcher, but you're not really worried about that with him. I mean, 10 or more Ks in 3 of his last 4 games. He's by far your top option tonight if you can fit him in.
Yeah, easily. And I mean, he's been cruising as of late. And if you look at the Vegas odds, he's nearly a minus 300 favorite again. Or, I mean, like Kershaw was the other day. And you just don't see that very often. But at the same time, he's priced appropriately, 11.7K. That's a pretty steep price tag. I mean, granted, I'm going to have some shares of him in cash games. But at the same time, there's some reasonable mid-range, upper mid-range pitchers that you could slot in there and hope that they give you somewhat of a similar output as Scherzer. And one of those guys I'm looking at is Garrett Cole at home against a Mets lineup that's, not really intimidating at all, to say the very least. Cole's a very good ground ball pitcher, shouldn't run into trouble. Decent strikeout rate. I think he's one of the better picks in that range, 9.4K.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I mean, he's got that great strikeout rate, like you mentioned. The Mets, 28th in the league against righties. Also, second lowest team ISO. Also in a pitcher's park in PNC there. So, a lot of things going in his favor. I think I'm with you. If I'm paying a little bit down, it's going to be either for him or for Michael Pineda, who is, you don't like that he's in New York against some big lefty bats. Guys like we were talking before the show with Chu getting it going. Obviously, Prince Fielder having a nice season. Adrian Beltre as well. But Pineda's got big-time upside. He's not walking anyone. 1.4% strikeout, or 1.4% walk rate. You're obviously not chasing those 16 Ks again, but you are looking at the fact that the Rangers are 26th in the league against right-handed pitchers and strike out 21% of the time. So I think my cash games, and I think you're of the same thinking, is going to be someone in those 3 players. If you can afford Scherzer, you get him. If not, I think both those other guys are fine swerves.
Yeah, of Pineda and Cole, I think Cole's the safer cash game option just due to park factor and whatnot. Pineda, I mean, if you're going for upside, we've seen it that he has, double-digit strikeout upside, especially against this Texas lineup. The park factor in Yankee Stadium doesn't line up as well, especially with Fielder, Chu, Beltre, those guys who can go yard against him. But I think his ownership percentage is going to be down a little bit because of his last rocky start at Kansas City. I mean, I don't expect that to carry over tonight. 2 completely different teams, completely different opponents, if you're looking at it that way. One more quick pick I'm going to throw at you. Strictly a tournament option. I really wouldn't roll him out for cash games today. Don't think it's necessary. But an underrated tournament option, I like Carlos Carrasco against the Reds at home. Semi-pitcher friendly ballpark, and he's got strikeout upside. He's got double-digit strikeout upside as well. Checking in as a 145 favorite against the struggling Mike Leake. So I think that's a sneaky pick that could go under the radar and give you just as many points as a guy like Cole or maybe even Scherzer tonight.
Yeah, I mean, Carrasco, like you mentioned, almost a 28% strikeout rate. Reds just below league average against righties. They got a decent team ISO, but they do strike out over 20% of the time. Obviously, nice for him having the Reds come to him in Cleveland with that much bigger park. So I think he makes a really good option in tournaments. And then a guy that I'll throw out there as well is Garrett Richards. I certainly won't be playing him in cash games, but he's been pitching very well over his last couple games. This Boston lineup really struggling right now. They're obviously much better against righties than they are against lefties. You look at their numbers against righties, and they're still not great. I mean, 16th in the league. They don't strike out a lot, 16.7%, which kind of limits the upside with Richards. But, when you can face an ice-cold offense right now with a guy who does have upside like Richards, I think that he's certainly in play for your tournaments.
Yep.
All right, let's go ahead and move on over here to catcher where FanDuel's all over it. You got Buster Posey now in cores against a fly ball pitcher, one of the worst pitchers in the league, if you ask me, and it's hard to argue. 4.6K, certainly a guy you want in your lineup. You can afford him, but also if you're getting Max Scherzer, you can't just have Max Scherzer and Buster Posey and a bunch of other cheap guys. So probably going to end up being more of a tournament option. I mean, I'll try to work him in there, but he's got to be your top play tonight.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm probably not going to do that for cash. Just don't think you can. So much opportunity cost with the other positions, not at catcher, because if you look down the list at catcher, it's not the most inspiring. So this may be a position that I'm punting tonight, just how lineup configuration works. And speaking to that theme, I'm kind of looking at Jason Castro. I think he's one of the better minimum salary options. He's 2.3K against Alfredo Simon, who doesn't have very good splits against lefties. Okay. So I think Castro, you can plug him in there and just kind of hope for the best. Hope he maybe gives you a hit or two. He has the power upside as well. So I really don't mind that pick. Otherwise, if you're looking about, for maybe a little more plausible option, guy with more upside, for a little more of a price point, 2.8K, Brian McCann.
Yep.
At home. He's against, is it Colby Lewis today?
Yeah.
It's one of those Texas pitchers who's terrible against lefties, Luis Martinez, Gallardo. I mean, they all are pretty much. They're pretty much the same guy, in my opinion, for daily fantasy purposes. But Brian McCann at home, short porch, Yankee Stadium, like that price point, 2.8K.
Absolutely. I'm on McCann as well. And I'll also throw out Miguel Montero. At Arizona, he's been hitting righties really well. We know Josh Collins are not very good. Facing his old team too, so maybe a little bit of extra something for him there. And then outside of that, I mean, if you're going to go cheap, you might as well look and see who's in the lineup for Colorado at catcher. You get your Michael McHenry, maybe you get your Nick Hundley. I think I might end up, if I'm punting, just go with one of those two guys for cheap, get myself some cores exposure without having to pay up.
Yeah, that's a good call.
All right, let's move on here to first base, where, of course, there's plenty more options. Great tournament option is Paul Goldschmidt against John Lester. I do like John Lester tonight as a tournament option, but as we know, Goldschmidt mashes lefties. He is at home, so it's not going to take long if he makes a mistake to take advantage there. A guy I'm really looking at, and I'm sure you are too, and I'm sure everyone else is too, but we'll say him anyway. Brandon Belt, really starting to get it going. $3,900. Gets Coors Field, and he gets Kyle Kendrick. I mean, can't get much of a better scenario for a guy who's really starting to pick it up at the plate.
Yeah, I like him, but I'm kind of wrestling a few options at first base, which, as you are pretty much every night. Yep. There's Jose Abreu sitting down there at 3.5K. At home against fly ball pitcher Phil Hughes, who's struggling as of late, not striking anyone out. Just really doesn't look like himself. He had some injury issues earlier this season, and I don't think that's really cleared up because he doesn't look like the pitcher from last year. So Jose Abreu at home, I like that at 3.5K. So it's pretty much between him and Belt for me, just depending on who fits in. I'll probably have a mixture of both.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think those are your top two options. And then, as you're looking elsewhere, I mean, if you're looking for some cores exposure, really your only option is going to be Willen Rosario, but I don't really want to pay that 3.7 tag against a righty. So I think
you're not willing to do that.
I am not willing to do that tonight. So outside of that, I always like Joey Votto, of course. He gets Carlos Carrasco tonight, who we know pretty good, but obviously prone to implosion at times. So I think if I'm targeting anyone, it's going to be lefties against him. Outside of that, I just hate paying down at first base. Really, in any scenario, only option I would really consider there would be Ben Paulson if he's in the lineup. 2.6K for some cheap cores exposure, but that would be it for me. How about you?
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much it for me as well.
All right, let's move on here to second base, where Jason Kipnis, as you know, has been hot. Had another hit, a double last game after a dud before that, but before that, his last 10 games just killing the ball. Mike Leake really struggling right now. We know Leake not very good against lefties, actually pretty bad against lefties. So if you're paying up, I mean, he's got to be a tournament-only option at that price for you, but you're certainly considering him. Other options, you're going to be looking for more cores here if you can. Joe Panic should be batting second against a righty tonight. He's 3.2K. I like him. Unfortunately, Devin Travis on the DL, so you don't get him. You weren't playing him against Felix Fernandez anyway, but I like to get some Toronto exposure when they're at home. Outside of that, DJ LeMahieu did bat second last night, so if he's second again, I don't mind him as a cheap option, but not a ton of upside with him because he doesn't really have any power.
Yeah, there's one guy that I'm looking at who has a very favorable price point, even though he's been uninspiring as of late, and that's Robinson Cano. He hasn't showed the power upside that we want out of him, but he's at Toronto against a fly ball pitcher tonight. I mean, this could be the time where he turns it around, and I mean, even if he doesn't get a homer, he's a multi-hit candidate. I love the price point, 2.9K. So I think I'm going to have him in a lot of cash games tonight.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I mean, he's going to get it going sooner rather than later. He's still hitting for a decent average. He's just a much better hitter than what he's been producing recently. Elsewhere, you can look at some other options that are cheaper. I don't love any of these guys though. You've got a guy like Justin Turner who's got some upside if he's hitting in the heart of that order, but he's a tournament-only play for me. And really, as you're looking deep, there's none of these really cheap guys that I have any desire to play tonight.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on here to third base where, of course, you've got Matt Carpenter up top there. He's going against Chris Young, the ultimate fly ball pitcher. I mean that literally, the ultimate fly ball pitcher. But at Kansas City, not a place I love. I do like Chris Bryant a lot. Homered last night. Now he gets a shift to Arizona. I think that if I'm paying up, he's probably the way I'm going if I'm not going to go with Nolan Arenado.
Yeah, I mean, it's between Bryant and Arenado basically for the top play, and they're similarly priced. So Bryant is going to have a lower ownership percentage. I mean, you can bank on that. Yeah. So if you want to go that route, use that rationale. I really don't mind that at all. Otherwise, looking down, kind of sticking with the Seattle theme, Kyle Seager against Estrada in the Rogers Center. Don't really hate that, and I don't really hate the price point at 2.9K as well. So I think he's one of the better mid-range cash game picks. And yeah, I mean, he fits comfortably into most lineup configurations.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a guy who mashed lefties in the minors. He's really starting to hit. He's got 6 consecutive multi-hit games. If you're targeting John Lesser as Yasmani Tomas, he's been batting around 5th in that order. I think he makes for a really nice tournament play at that price tag. And then another tournament play for you, if you're not playing Michael Pineda, is Adrian Beltre. Been finally heating up. Obviously, you know, the Yankee Stadium more generous to lefties than righties, but he certainly has the power to do some damage in that ballpark.
Yeah, great price at 3.1K.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's move on here to shortstop where give me your take on Troy Tulowitzki. Play or don't?
That's a loaded question.
It's tough.
It's a loaded question, and you know it. So I think it really depends on what you're doing at pitcher. If you're trying to get Scherzer in, I don't think you can get too low. If you're dropping down to Cole or something, I think it's a little more feasible. You can work him in. Otherwise, if I have Scherzer in, I'm probably going to go with Brandon Crawford of the same game. Granted, he's hitting down in the lineup a little bit. Where has he been hitting? 5th or 6th?
Yeah,
or
right
7th?
around there.
Okay, so I mean,
he batted 7th yesterday.
You don't love that, but I mean, I don't know if it matters in this game. I mean, he still has great upside. I mean, he's been producing. This is just a favorable situation for him. So, given that, I might take the discount with Crawford. But like I said, it just depends on what you have left. So,
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like you said, you want to get yourself a bunch of that exposure. But I mean, Tulo also hasn't looked great. I mean, he hasn't been hitting the ball hard. He is 4.5K. So I mean, if you don't have him in all your cores exposure, I don't blame you. I don't know how much of him I'll have tonight, but certainly want to have some in tournaments, if nothing else. Another interesting guy, if he gets a decent lineup spot, he's been all over the place, 2nd, 7th, 9th. Jose Ramirez, 2.9K. Obviously, Mike Leake struggles with lefties. He's a switch hitter, so you can bank on the fact that he'll be batting lefty tonight. Jung Ho Kong's another guy that's been hitting the ball pretty well. He gets Noah Syndergaard tonight. Obviously, it'll be the first time he's seen him, but 2.8K, I think he's got a decent amount of upside in that matchup as well.
There's one more guy that I think you're forgetting that I'm surprised you didn't mention. I thought you were going to mention, actually. Ian Desmond, 3.1K, very favorable price. I mean, and he's been hitting great lately. He's actually hitting 2nd for the Nationals. So ahead of Bryce Harper. I mean, you can't complain about that. And outside of the Coors game, I think Sean O'Sullivan is probably the next worst pitcher going tonight. So Ian Desmond, 3.1K. I think he's going to be underutilized, and he's still a solid option.
Yeah, I love that call. I mean, home runs in his last 2 games, multi-hits in 3 of 5. Like you said, gets about a couple spots ahead of Bryce Harper. I mean, there's few better spots in the entire world you could be than hitting right ahead of Mr. Bryce Harper. And speaking of Bryce Harper, we'll go ahead and talk about him. You already said that Sean O'Sullivan is terrible, and Bryce Harper, the only reason he didn't get you positive points last time is because he was too busy screaming at the umpire and getting thrown out after not getting on base on his first at-bat. So I assume Bryce Harper is going to keep a level head tonight, and you've got to like that matchup with Sean O'Sullivan. He's obviously your top option in the outfield if you can afford him. But 6K, I mean, it's really, really tough.
Yeah, I mean, he's basically like a lower mid-range pitcher at this point from a salary perspective. So I just don't think you can do that, especially with all the bats and Coors tonight. So what we are looking at is I'm kind of wrestling between, of that Coors game, Carlos Gonzalez, Hunter Pence at 3.3K. As we were talking before the show, for cash games, I think it's Pence for the same price point. Just because Gonzalez, he's home run or bust, and he hasn't even been a home run machine lately, like as we've grown accustomed to. So I don't know if you can really rely on that. Hunter Pence, as we said, he's a guy who could get you a home run, and he's also a multi-hit candidate, could steal a base. He can just do a lot of things to rack up fantasy points, and I think that's what you want to key on for cash games. So Hunter Pence, 3.3K. I love it.
Yeah, and in that pretty spacious ballpark there, I mean, he could certainly, he's a hustle guy. You're never going to see anyone play or run harder than this guy does. So he can turn singles into doubles, doubles into triples, all those things pretty quickly. So certainly considering that. If you're going cheap, of course, as he always is against a righty, Seth Smith, well, you're kind of de facto cheap play at 2.3K. You're going to see a lot of him tonight, probably as a filler. I'm with you there on the Pence thing. I love that call. And Carlos Gonzalez, just like all the rest of the Rockies, has really been a big kind of letdown recently. So maybe tonight's the night he gets it going, but I'm not sure that I'm willing to pay to find out in my cash games. So other options you've got, of course, you're looking at Nelson Cruz in your tournaments at 4.7K against Marco Estrada. I mean, I don't know how many more times we need to tell you. Marco Estrada, he legitimately is one of the 3 worst pitchers in the major leagues in home run rate over the past few seasons. So get yourself some exposure to him. Ryan Braun crushes lefties. He's starting to get it going a lot. 4,400 makes him a really interesting option. I'm not in love with any of these other guys up top. With so many good pitchers on the mound, there's not a lot of good spots for your hitters. So not a lot of places where I'm really trying to take advantage tonight.
Yeah, and then going back to the Coors game, because I mean I think that's where the focus is for outfield tonight. You have Charlie Blackmon, 3.8K. I mean, I love the spot for him. Don't love the price point. I think there's cheaper guys from that game, and Blackman's just been kind of mediocre lately. So he's someone to consider if he fits organically, but I'm not going to shove him into my lineup and make things work around him. Some of those other options from that game, you have Angel Pagan. You have to love the price point, 2.6K. I mean, he's one of the cheaper bats from this game, and as we said, he could hit a couple gappers. Get a few doubles, score some runs. I mean, I think he's almost a cash game lock for that price point.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And a guy that also in that game just got added to the player pool right after his 4-hit game yesterday, Brandon Barnes at $3,000. If he's in the lineup, he's a nice, cheap way to get yourself some exposure. He'll probably be batting 6th or 7th, which you don't love. But like you said earlier, really doesn't matter. You want to get yourself some exposure here wherever you can. And obviously, his first start since coming up gets 4 hits and a double. He's got to be having some confidence right now. And we know the Ride and Vocal song, when he's bad, he's really bad. So I'm getting myself a ton of exposure there.
And Gregor Blanco has been leading off for San Francisco. He's been phenomenal lately, but the price reflects that. 3.3K. I don't know if you want to go there. I mean, keep him on your radar, but I'd rather have Pence probably. For the same price point, and then steer down from there. So someone to consider, someone to blend in if you're filling out multiple lineups, but I don't think you have to use him exclusively.
Yeah, and I think that Blanco's a great swerve off those other 2 guys because they will be much, much more popular, and you still get exposure. Obviously, he doesn't have as much power as those other guys, but he's got some speed. So, he could hit a gap or turn that into a triple pretty quickly. So,
yep.
All right. Anybody else you want to mention over here?
Not really for outfield.
Okay.
So if we want to, I have a preliminary lineup here. If we want to just go through that and we can
Yeah.
critique it and kind of mess around with things for a minute here.
Let's do it.
I'm just gonna run through it really fast. Starting with Max Scherzer as pitcher. Then I have Jason Castro as a cheap pump play at catcher. Jose Abreu first base. Robinson Cano second base. Kyle Seager, Brandon Crawford, Hunter Pence, Angel Pagan, and Seth Smith.
Yeah, and I think you've covered a lot of bases there. Like we mentioned earlier, it's tough to pay for catcher tonight. I think Castro gives you that nice upside and a fine matchup. And we've seen him kind of all over the place between 5th and 8th. If he's batting around 5th or 6th tonight, I think he's going to be in a lot of my cash games at that price tag. And, you know, that Seager and Cano duo is one that, when they're hitting well, you love having your cash games. They're finally starting to get it going a little bit, and you can't complain about that matchup tonight. You know, you wouldn't be surprised to see both these guys take one deep on Marco Estrada, because, I mean, he just cannot keep the ball in the ballpark at all.
Yeah, and then if we want to mix things up, if I want to go drop down to Garrett Cole, you can actually fit Buster Posey in, go Cole Posey with that combination. Otherwise, if you want to go with someone like Nick Hundley or whatever, then you have 1,700 left over to do what you want with. So, I mean, there's a couple different routes to go if you want to steer down to a guy like Garrett Cole for cash games, which I'm probably going to do, like having 2 lineups out there. And then just kind of, upgrade from there, just getting exposure to some different guys.
Yeah, and I think that might not be a bad way to go tonight with so many pitching options. You know, if there's some hitters you can't fit, maybe split up your cash games, like you said, Scherzer in one, Cole in another. Get yourself your big bats with Cole, and then just try to get yourself a nice amount of balance with your Scherzer lineup, because he is expensive at almost $12K, but I certainly will be having a lot of exposure to him, and I think you need to as well, especially in your cash games tonight.
Yep.
All right, with that, hopefully we helped you out a little bit with your lineups here. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe, and check out all of our content at dailyfantasycafe.com for tonight's huge slate, and we'll see you tomorrow.